right, another edition of Off Topic. My name is Randy Zellea from Back Sports Page. Joining me now, Newsday's finest, the longtime beat writer, Tom Rock, joining the show. Tom, thanks for giving me a few minutes today. I appreciate it, brother.
Randy, happy to be here. Always nice to talk to you.
Yeah, so we were just talking off the air, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, cool, we got Tom coming on the show. I'm like, I've known Tom since, I think, 2011, 2012. We met at Justin Tuck's Toy Drive back in the day, and then I started thinking about it, and I just remember the press room from the last couple of years, and I was like, wow, Tom's been here forever. Like you just said, Peter Schwartz has been there forever, and then I've been there for a long time, and I was a little baffled by that.
Yeah, all of a sudden you blink your eyes and you're the elder statesman. It's crazy the way that happens. Yeah, I mean, when I came in the room, I remember I replaced Neil Best one day as a backup, and the joke was that I was going to be the second best. But his shoes were certainly hard to follow. You know, my first assignment for the Giants was going to the White House with them.
Really?
They won the 2007 Super Bowl.
What was that like? What was that like for you?
It was it was a great experience. It was fun. It was a strange time for me though, because it was a team I hadn't covered. I had covered the Jets the season before, and these guys were going down there to celebrate the Super Bowl championship that I hadn't really covered. So I didn't know a lot of guys on the team. But it was a great experience. I got to do it again 3 years later, whatever it was, in 2012. We went down there again. So maybe another trip coming up in the future. Who knows?
Well, can you explain to our audience? Hopefully, like you're saying, hopefully we could have one in the future. But can you explain to listeners and people who are watching what the role of a beat writer is? Because there's a lot when I bring up the word beat writers to a lot of people, and including my own staff, I always have to sort of define what it is, but can you give your definition of what a beat writer is?
Well, I think a beat writer is sort of like we're sort of the miners of information. There are columnists, there are aggregators, there are people who write about things, but we're sort of the guys that are in there picking out the raw ore, the raw minerals, the raw facts, the raw quotes that become those big stories and things like that. Obviously, that's changed a little bit this year. We're not physically in the locker room, and I think that's hurt our profession quite a bit. Hopefully, we'll be back in there next season. But typically, I think we're sort of the day-to-day extractors of information, and then the rest of the world uses it as they can. Sometimes accurately, sometimes not. I think Joe Judge's speech the other night on the Eagles is a perfect example of people using it inaccurately. A lot of people saw it as him whining about the Giants not making the playoffs, and he was very clear that that's not what he was talking about. It was just a philosophical decision, a philosophical difference that he has with the way that the Eagles played the end of that game and the way he would have done it. So sometimes that information, like I said, gets twisted between the beat writer and the eventual consumer. But the quotes are the quotes, and what he said is on film and on digital and on Zooms and however else we're doing it these days. So, but yeah, it's a fun job. It's interesting. It's never dull. You never know what the answers are going to be coming out of people's mouths. So, and you get to ask the questions. You get to. Everybody's sitting at home wondering why didn't they go kick the field goal there, or why did they run the fake field goal, and you're the one that gets to ask the question, why'd you run that fake field goal? Why'd you try to throw it to Nick Gates for a touchdown? And they get to answer it, and then everybody knows.
I guess this is the proper question to ask, because you've been in this profession for a long time. From when you started with the Giants in 2007 to now, can you talk about the change in presenting the information to the audience? Can social media is such a very integral part now. Can you explain from your perspective? Because I don't think there's any real right or wrong answer on how to explain this, but from your opinion about the integration with social media as far as getting the information out.
Well, it first started in terms of. I remember we had a staff meeting before the Super Bowl. I think it was Super Bowl 41, and Arthur Staple was our Giants beat writer at the time, and we were kind of kicking around ideas. And he said, it was like the middle of the meeting. He said, "Should we have a blog?" And that was sort of the launching point of our digital coverage of this sport. Yeah, I mean, my position on it is it's certainly more immediacy, but that comes with risk, and you're basically getting to watch the process of how the stories are made. It used to be you'd open a newspaper and you'd see the complete version of what was reported the day before, and now you see it along the steps. So you see, some people tweet the questions that they're going to ask to people, and then they tweet the response, and then they tweet the follow up, and then they get a secondary quote in response to the first quote, maybe from another team or another player, and so you see the process as it unfolds rather than seeing it as one cohesive story, one cohesive narrative. And sometimes that works, sometimes that's entertaining, and sometimes that's not as beneficial journalistically, I think, to what we're trying to do. There's certainly a lot of immediacy. You gotta get everything out quickly, and fans want to know what's going on with their team, not an hour after it happened, but seconds after it happened. And
it's crazy.
It forces you to sometimes make some analyses that aren't accurate, that you don't have the full picture, the full information, that you didn't have a chance to dig a little deeper and get a better picture and a clearer answer to what is going on. But that's that's a price we pay in every part of our lives now.
Yeah, and it's sort of scary too, because now Twitter is sort of the breaking news of the sports world. Big things happen through Twitter, and I've done years and years of the NBA, and that's where NBA free agency lives on now. It's all Twitter, and to me it's crazy. But that's the way it works, right? That's the way generations have evolved, and now Twitter and social media is the thing. I just can't imagine Eli Manning on Snapchat. To me, that's the thing that would make me laugh more than anything.
He's actually pretty good on Twitter.
Yeah,
he joined after he retired. It would have been nice to have him on board while he was playing, but he's got. I mean, I think it's good that people see the personality of Eli Manning a lot more than they probably did while he was playing, while he was a Giant. He's a funny guy.
What's funny, and people will ask me my Mount Rushmore of sports, and I always put Eli on there, and people think that I'm nuts. But I say one thing that you don't realize is he plays in the biggest market in sports, and he gets hammered all the time. And for him to have the mental toughness of being able to throw 2 interceptions and come back out there and still try to win the game, it just shows something about him, and it's just a toughness. And like you said, he went to the Derek Jeter School of Media, where he lets you onto the porch, but he doesn't let you in the house. He'll talk with you for 20 minutes, but say nothing.
Right. You know what? I'll tell you the day that I appreciated Eli Manning was the couple of days after he got benched for Geno Smith, and we did all the big press conferences and everything. The day it happened, obviously there was a lot of stories. And the next day I was in the locker room and I went up to Geno and I had a follow-up question to something that he'd been asked the day before. And I went to ask him something, and he said, "Man, I just talked yesterday." And I was like, Eli, in all the years I covered Eli Manning, I never got that response. I was never told, and told no, I'm not going to answer that. So, Geno Smith was the quarterback for 1 week, and I got blown off by him the second day. So that was definitely the day I appreciated covering Eli Manning for all the years that I did.
I'll tell you one great Eli story. I don't know if you were at the first softball game that the license plate guy hosted the first year he did it, and Eli was there. But I do remember a bunch of fans being able to go over to Eli, when we're asking him for autographs. And Eli wanted to make sure he signed in front of the whole group. He wanted to make sure he signed everybody. And his manager was trying to pull him, and he just wouldn't he didn't want to go until he finished up.
Mhm.
And I always say that's, what we do is obviously a great thing, but the kids are like the most, without the kids watching and admiring these guys don't have that legacy. And watching Eli fulfill everything to me was a sign of class.
He's a different guy. I mean, he was raised for this job, so it's something that he's grown up in and seen his whole life. But to be able to function in that world, to be able to keep a private life while maintaining the public persona, that's quite an accomplishment. I maintain that when you look around the league at people, people of his draft class, people of his stature in the league, Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger and Philip Rivers. I know they're all in the playoffs now. And Drew Brees, you put all those guys together. But I think that Eli Manning had one of the best ends to his career. Not that he wasn't playing, but he came off the field a winner, and I don't know that any of those other guys are going to be able to do that in their home stadium. Never mind, to the standing ovation of an adoring crowd, into the arms of your family, and then to kind of stick around and forever be a New York Giants icon. That's pretty special.
Yeah, and with that being said too, I want to sort of jump around a little bit. We'll talk about this season with the Giants. Before we do, I just have to backtrack with one thing that John Mara said yesterday during his presser, and the same thing with Dave Gettleman. And Dave sort of missed the question. He sort of downgraded the question. But John brought up the 2018 draft and brought up the 2018 season. And I think, and in my mind, when I heard him make the comment that we missed in 2018, I sort of felt like he was talking about the Odell contract and what ended up having to transpire because of that move, and some of the moves that ended up having to be made after that for 2019. In your opinion of covering this team, was going back to Eli in 2018 and signing Odell the right moves at that point in time? Because you've probably forgotten more football than I'll ever know, because you're around it, you've been around it for so long. Mm-hmm. But do you think that was the right move in 2018 to stick with Eli and re-sign Odell? And do you think that's what they were talking about yesterday on the presser?
I think that they tried to have it both ways. They tried to have a rebuild with their offensive line and things like that, and bring in pieces that they thought could help right away. And you can't rebuild for tomorrow. If you're going to rebuild, it's got to look like it did this year. And they were trying to rebuild. They were trying to have one foot in the world of rebuilding and one foot in the world of let's make one more run at this. And you can't do that. As much as we just talked about Eli Manning and how much respect we have for him, I think that they would have been better served moving on from him at a little earlier, not putting him through that process. I think it would have been more respectful, I think, to Eli's legacy, rather than have him out there struggling with those teams like we saw at the end.
Yeah, and like, I agree with you 100%. I honestly felt since 2013 he's been running for his life, because I can't think of a franchise that went through more players for the offensive line since 2013 than the Giants. This is just my narrative, and this is what I've been spinning on my shows, and the people who I work with. If I had to define the New York Giants for 2020, this was a team that had new coaches trying to deliver a new culture and a new culture and a new attitude for their franchise. But he had to do it over Zoom with new players who are still learning his system, with not a lot of guys, because he only had 4 players left since 2017. And he's doing it with no spring, little preseason, no preseason games. So you have guys who are getting comfortable as the season goes. Whereas championship contending teams like the Saints, like the Packers, like the Kansas City Chiefs, those key positions like the offensive line and the defense have guys who've been playing together for 3 to 4 years already. So I already felt that the Giants were behind the 8 ball. I just wanted to take my analogy and see what you thought, being a little bit more involved than I am.
I would say that the Giants didn't know it at the time, and it was a year ago today that they hired Joe Judge. That they didn't know it at the time, but they hired the perfect guy to get them through this upcoming season. They didn't know what the challenges were. Nobody did. Who knew that the draft was going to be held virtually and the offseason workouts and all those things. And but they hired a guy who was a teacher. He's young. He's tech savvy. He knows what he's doing. He understands the players. He connects to the players a little bit better, I think, virtually and digitally, and it was able to build that foundation without actually having hands together. I do think it hurt the Giants in a lot of ways. You look at especially like offensive line. I think that took a lot out of that. That's a group that traditionally really needs to bond together and have their weekly dinners out and do things and go over each other's houses and whatever it is that offensive linemen eat and drink and do during the week. They weren't able to do that, and so they were able to come into practice and get their reps, but there was no personal connection there other than the digital one. And so I think that was definitely an obstacle. They were learning a new system. Clearly it took a little while to get the defense together on the same page. I don't know the offense ever did. Daniel Jones obviously was able to fix some of his turnover issues that he had earlier in the season, but the points were never there. Just the one game against Dallas really was the time they scored over 30 points. So it's going to be interesting to see how next year evolved, what they were able to do in the spring, what they're able to do in the summer, and with the preseason games, and get things going in the right direction. I mean, being a new coach is such a challenge that they give you an extra mini camp, and the Giants didn't have any mini camps because the pandemic knocked them out. So so that was the challenge they were faced with.
Yeah, and I thought a lot of players overachieved for Joe. I had never, through my years here being around this team, seen maybe since Coughlin, that players were going to almost go through a wall for a coach, and that was what I felt with Joe. And I felt that the defense clicked against Chicago. That's when I felt that after Saquon went down, you thought that game was going to turn into 25-0 type of romp, and that defense clicked up. And like you said, I don't know if the offense ever did really click. They went through, Wayne Gallman, I think if you had to sort of name an MVP on the offense who sort of came through and was pretty consistent second half year, had to be Wayne Gallman.
I would say so. I mean, Sterling listen, that last game against Dallas, Sterling Shepard willed them to a win.
Yeah, that's very true.
I mean, running the ball and playing hurt too. So, like I think that's a good way to say it, is that Joe Judge elevated his players, and I don't know that other coaches have done that in the past. He helped them find a new level. Leonard Williams is probably the best example of that. I don't know that Joe Judge in particular, but certainly Sean Spencer on the defensive line and Patrick Graham as the defensive coordinator. They were able to find something in Leonard Williams that hadn't been able to blossom in the NFL.
Real quick to finish off the Giants. I think we're done with them for a little while anyway. So, if you had to give a grade for the Giants this year, what would you think it would be?
Well, 6-10 is not good. It's a D, and Bill Parcells, of course, says you are what your record says you are. I don't always agree with that, though. Listen, they were in contention for the division until the 256th game of a 256 game season, and there's something to be said for that. They won. They had some big wins. They had some awful losses. You wonder where their season would have gone if Daniel had remained healthy. If Daniel or if they hadn't played Daniel against the Cardinals and then he had to miss the game against the Browns the next week. There's probably a lot of hindsight and things that the Giants would wish they had a do-over on, and decisions that they made in games and 4 games like that. They lost their best player a game and a half into the season. That's and we're able to function. I mean, I think that's an achievement. They played a game. They lost it, but they played a game without their best Pro Bowl cornerback because he went to see a chiropractor who tested positive for COVID. What kind of a crazy season has that happened?
Yeah, never.
Yeah. When you're grading 2020, you can't grade it based on 2019, 2018. Hopefully not based on 2021, wherever the world is in September when we kick off this upcoming season. I think you just have to look at 2020 as its own entity and say that the Giants were a team that was 1 win away from winning the division, 1 win away from making the playoffs, and put some scares into some of the best teams in football. Certainly, they beat the Seahawks. They went toe to toe with the Bucks. They went toe to toe with the Bears. The Rams. That game got a little dicey. The 49ers and but they were able to. They were never embarrassed, I guess. And in the years past, there was a lot of times when they were embarrassed. I think the loss to the Eagles is probably the one that sticks with them the most. The way that game ended with Evan Ingram's drop and then the touchdown against Jabril Peppers, and that was a game where their best players didn't come through for them. The guys in the secondary, Evan Ingram, those are the guys you expect to make plays. The younger guys, they mess up and they cost you a game, and you kind of live with that as a growing pain. That was a game when their top strength guys didn't come through, and I think that when they look back at this season, that's the one that's going to stick with them.
Yeah, and I also thought that Dallas game too was a missed opportunity as well. Real quick, just before we finish up here, I know last year you wrote a book, and I definitely wanted to discuss that with you about the process and your general feeling about being an author and being able to go to the bookstore and seeing something that you created on the shelf.
That's definitely a crazy feeling when you go walk into Barnes and Noble and it's sitting there on the rack in the front of the store. Miracle moments in New York Giants football history. There was a couple of times this year when I thought maybe we'll have to write another chapter. But it didn't quite work out. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It was. I had a lot of fun writing it. Going back to the Super Bowl teams. Obviously, the ones I was familiar with for the last 2, the ones I grew up watching, the ones in the 80s and 90s, and then going back to the championship teams in the 50s, the 30s. All those, digging through all those old articles and really finding out the interesting stories about behind those games and the sneakers game and things like that. Did you know they won their first championship on a fake punt from their own end zone? We talk about Doug Peterson's Philly special and gutsy calls and things like that. I mean, they were playing the Bears and they ran a fake punt on 3rd down from their own end zone, and it wound up winning the game for them. So the sport has definitely changed since then. The way it's been covered, the way it's grown, the way it's been appreciated publicly, it's all changed. It's unrecognizable from the time in 1925 when Tim Mara first plopped down his couple $100 and bought the charter for the team. But the Giants are still the Giants, and it's all part of their DNA and part of their history. And I think when you talk to John Mara, as we did just a couple of days ago at the end of the season. You can still kind of see that legacy and that history and that tradition that's trying to come through again. It's a. I mean, we just celebrated the 100th anniversary of the NFL and their 100th season last year, and the Giants have been a part of that for 95 of them.
Wow.
Only the Packers, Bears, and Cardinals are the same team, and the Giants really have been in the same location for longer than most of those teams. So it's a special franchise, and I think sometimes we tend to overlook that in New York sports because of the Yankees and because of the Rangers and other teams that have these epic histories that and sometimes the Giants do get overshadowed, and I think a little underappreciated when it comes to their history and what they've meant to New York.
I think I know for me, from my perspective, being able to work with guys like you and I like to, you and I just were talking about before we came on, I'm very observant. I try to watch what's going on around me when I'm over there and try to learn from others' mistakes. I remember one of the first camps I ever been to, somebody asked a question to Tom Coughlin, and Tom Coughlin ripped the kid apart. He says, well, if you would have been here yesterday, you would have heard me answer that question already. And ever since that day, I'm saying, I want to just listen to what's going on. And then if I feel like I really have something that's dire, I'll address it. But then until then, one-on-ones is the way to go for me. And being able to watch you and guys like Jordan and Paul, and you guys have given me the education that I'm now passing on to my staff. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, and thanks for giving me some time today. Let's finish off with some plugs. Let's let everybody know where they can find you, social media wise.
I appreciate it, Randy. Yeah, TomRock_Newsday is my Twitter handle. And of course, Miracle Moments in New York Giants football history. You can buy it wherever you buy books. I don't know wherever people can buy books these days. It's hard to find, but you can certainly get it. All the big online stores.
And I want to let everybody know Tom is awesome on Twitter, because during the game when he's tweeting, he's not just giving you the play-by-play. He's throwing comedy in there too, which had me in the press box, me and the internet crew on the side there, just howling at times because we were just laughing so hard.
Well, so, if you're watching the game, you don't need me to tell you the play-by-play. I'll just tell you what I'm thinking rather than what you just saw.
And which, by the way, you still have the best picture as your little icon on your Twitter account, because it's I think it's the Newsday with the mask on it.
Mask on it, yeah.
Yeah. So
hopefully I'll take that off for the 2021 season.
Yeah. All right, Tom, hold on one second. Guys, I want to thank you very much for listening to Off Topic. Check us out, backsportspage.com. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Randy BSP. Otherwise, see you guys next week.